right.
Did you nod? Is that you nodding?
Yeah,
Welcome back in to the Casual GM podcast. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever. Drew, yourself?
I'm good, actually. I'm in quite high spirits, both in life in general and watching the Lions. So, and I can hear the cries of the fan base right now, being like, "How can you be not completely upset with the Lions at 1-5 at this point in the season?" And I just don't know that I expected much else from them this year, considering, right?
I think we probably would have guessed maybe one more win, maybe two at the beginning of the season. But, I mean, did anybody actually think we were going to be a playoff team this year?
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's true. Unreasonable expectations, right?
Right. We say this every week. So I think that if, Levi Wuzarike didn't have spinal fusion surgery and, is here and contributing, like, who knows what impact that makes? If Tracy Walker hadn't had an Achilles, like, what, he was playing well before he went down, there's, and every team's going to have injuries or whatever, but, like, I don't expect that, we've seen graphs and charts and all kinds of good, like, visual references that indicate how badly the injury bug has hit the Detroit Lions, and they weren't a team that was equipped to overcome those.
Yeah.
Yep. See, Funky's chimed in too. So he said that a lot of people expected way too much from the squad.
Yeah. I mean, how much of that do you think is something like Hard Knocks? I mean, Hard Knocks was great. Like, I enjoyed watching it. It really, I bought into the leadership, right? Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and, man, Aaron Glenn and Deuce Staley, those guys were great together. Like, I bought into them. So, like, is that a good chunk of, like, maybe although I didn't make my expectations any higher, I did expect, like, I do buy into what they're doing though.
So I still maintain that, like, I think anytime that you get, so we had a talk with Lions Rumble, who was a guest of ours at some point in chat, and very positive guy, loves Hopium, does Lions Rumble, right? As do many Lions fans. And when it seems like everything's going, like, oh, this is the year, and this is what the breakthrough is coming, and it's here, and here's the reasons that we can point to, and we saw it on Hard Knocks and whatever else, like, I do think that feeds into the expectations. I personally think that is all still on the horizon. Like, I don't see any reason for people to be less hopeful about this team than they were at the beginning. It's just that, like, you're going through the rigors of the NFL season, and, like, your opponents have something to say about whether or not you're going to pick up victories, right? So I still maintain that I think this team is capable of getting to 6 wins this year. And I know the Bears just won on Monday night against New England, but we still get to play the Bears twice. And Carolina Panthers are on the schedule, and, like, we do get to play the Jets and Giants, and I know that they both have winning records right now, but are those teams truly better than the Detroit Lions? We're going to play the games.
Yeah. We'll find out if they're over. Like, I thought our offense overproduced the first few games, and we're a lot closer to this past week, where we can string some long drives together, but we're not an amazing offense. I'm wondering if the Jets and the Giants as a team have overproduced on the win column, Hey, Dan.
He's feeling under the weather, he says.
That's unfortunate.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, hope you feel better, buddy. Thanks for stopping in.
Yeah.
But I guess for Funky and Dan, what about you guys? Like, are you guys hopeful? Where are you at on the hope scale on the 1 to 10? 10 is, Super Bowl bound, baby, and 1 is just, terrible. We're going downhill. Like, where are you guys at?
While they're forming their responses, I did want to touch on some things that Funky had put in the chat here. He says, It was nice this last week to finally see Hutch standing up, which he has been asking for a while.
Yeah.
Funky has said this in chat.
Last year.
Yep, and so he had a lot of success at Michigan, standing up, getting, converting speed to power, that kind of thing, using his athleticism. And so we see Josh Paschal return this week. Kaminsky was back. He only played 10 snaps, but he was back. And now they have tried coming out of the break. Dan Campbell said they were going to try to make some adjustments. He talked to Aaron Glenn over the bye week about it. And so we saw adjustments. We saw the defense do things differently, and they played better.
Yeah.
Now it still was a loss. But like 24 points is better than almost any game outside of Washington that they have played this year.
And I think 17 of those points were on turnovers.
And we're going to talk about that because that is to me, the difference in this game, right? Yeah. Is they almost always are. So I'm hopeful that we see more of what Funky wanted Hutchinson to do. Hopefully Paschal and Kaminsky only get more and more healthy until they're as close to 100% as they possibly can be. But the idea that Dan Campbell is failing as a head coach is one that I honestly do not believe in. And I don't believe that Aaron Glenn is not failing as a defensive coordinator. And I don't think that Brad Holmes is doing a bad job as a general manager, for reasons that we have discussed in the past and will continue to talk about. Now, I will go on record as saying that if we are 1-6 at this point next year or whatever it's going to be, I'm going to start asking the same kind of questions that are going to be asked this year. Yeah. That would be, year 3 of Brad Holmes' first class. The guys this year that are contributing will all have an off-season program, been in the system, adjusted to the speed of the NFL. And just what Dan just mentioned, they're going to free up some cap room. And what we have talked about in the past is not needing to go out and sign a tier 1 free agent, but can you upgrade over Alex Anzalone? Can you upgrade over Mike Hughes, Juju Hughes, these guys, what's the next draft going to look like? We don't know that yet, but I've maintained, and I think that some of Funky and Dan here have said in the chat is, who was it? Oh yeah, you've got it up already.
Yeah.
Part of
you pay me the big bucks, Drew. Come on.
Right? Yeah. 100%. The advertisements are flowing freely on our channel. Part of it's Hard Knocks. Another part was watching the Michigan fan base and Hutch. Another part of it is people think all rebuilds are the same and should only take 1 year. And that's an excellent point. Not every rebuild is the same.
Yeah.
If you're the Los Angeles Chargers, who are also having a worse year this year than they thought they would have, but it's they put big money into J.C. Jackson, who underperformed until he had season-ending surgery. Joey Bosa's out for 10 weeks. But you traded for Khalil Mack. You're all in because you've got Justin Herbert and you're in your championship window right now because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and you have all those funds freed up to support him while he is still ascending his play. So I think the Lions are close, as you can see through most of these losses are 1-score losses, with the exception of the last 2 weeks. But the ball bounces slightly differently. Someone's not hurt. We start off next season with Jamison Williams, and who knows what some of these 1-score losses or 1-score wins, or maybe we start blowing out some teams.
Well, and to both Funky's point and even Dan's point here about the rebuilds are not always the same. And Dan, this is what I expected to see until they get some cap room freed up next year. So a 6. Right. I think 6 is pretty reasonable at this point. We're a 1-5 team, and Dan's a 6. I'm probably in that same area, that 6 to 7. I'm hopeful. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And not everything is the same. It's people, I think, forget how bad our cap was just completely bungled going into this new era with Holmes.
Yeah.
And we still are fixing it. So to Dan's point, this is probably going to be the last year of major cap issues from previous regimes. And everything after this, we can probably, cut, and there might be a little bit of dead cap space. But like overall, I think this next year is going to be kind of where we're freeing ourselves from the mistakes of previous regimes. And I think that'll help us kind of pick up and move forward and really take a bigger stride than we did before.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm still pretty hopeful. And toward that end, Mike, I'd like to share my screen and talk about just how close this last week was.
Let's do that.
Okay, so share my screen. Present.
Oh, you're not even ready. Come on, Drew.
Okay. You're mad at me because I said that to you earlier. Okay, so this is the team stats from the Lions and Cowboys game this last Sunday. So I am shocked so after the game was over, I went and I always go back and look at the stats, and I was shocked at how close these numbers are. So Dallas is 5-2, Detroit's 1-5, right? Now, of course, Dallas was missing Dak Prescott for what, 6 of those games, 5 of those games.
I think 5. I think they went 4-1 with him out.
Right. First downs, 18-21, third down efficiency the same, total plays within 3 of each other, total yards 18 yards different, number of drives the same, yards per play the same, passing yards virtually identical, rushing yards they got us by about 22, yards per rush we were slightly better than they were. Here's the one big difference: red zone. We had 1 trip, failed to convert. They had 4 trips, they got in on 3 of them. And here's the other big one: turnovers. We had 5. Now 2 of those came in the last 4 minutes, but still 3 turnovers is not great.
Well, I believe all 4 of our final drives ended up in turnovers.
Well, we can look at that in a second.
Excellent.
Total yards 330 to 312. Time of possession, we actually had the ball longer than they did, 31 minutes. They're 28 minutes, so another 2.5 minutes different there. These stats belong to both a 5-2 team and a 1-5 team, with the 2 key differences being turnovers and the ability to convert in the red zone. So if we want to go by play, we can see how these last possessions went: fumble, interception, fumble. So their last 4 possessions, to your point, all ended in turnovers. And prior to that, it was punt, interception, half. So basically the entire second half was trash.
Yeah, it was 1 punt and everything else was a turnover.
Now I am happy that now that we have made Jack Fox the highest paid punter in the NFL, that he is actually out there punting in some of these situations.
We're getting our money's worth.
Yeah. So, but here we go, punt, field goal, punt. So that's not what you want to see, right? We wanted to be more efficient on offense than we were this last Sunday, something more, akin to what we saw in the beginning of the year. But don't ignore my comment.
Oh yeah, I wasn't gonna throw that out there because I don't want to name drop anybody.
Oh, David Pike. I'll name drop him, Mike. You don't worry. Yeah, so there is another YouTuber that Dan and I both know from a Facebook group recently, a Facebook group that we were all in, who's a very much, and we've talked about Goff supporters, right? So all Dan's doing is just saying oops, this guy's gonna have a hard time. And to be honest, I don't know where, when it comes to Jared Goff, the continued support seems to be coming from. He does not have DJ Chark, and to Funky's point, Amon-Ra St. Brown was out early in this game with the concussion protocol. So he didn't have his 2 targets. Swift has not played now for what, if it wasn't for the bye week, a month.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be back soon because he's dynamic. We need it.
Yeah. And so
when he's in there.
Right. Yes. The offense is different when he is in there. And I'm going to sneeze. Can you talk for a minute?
I can, and you can mute yourself. And actually, one of the things I found interesting also was what Funky had mentioned. I threw up on the screen there. A lot of people still blaming Dan Campbell for this loss and sticking up for Goff.
Well, what is he supposed to do? I mean, he's supposed to be
I thought he was fine. Like people are. So here are the quote unquote controversial things about this game that I just disagree with. Number one, the fumble down at the on the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
The complaints there are he should have challenged it. It was clearly not a touchdown. It was clearly not a touchdown. There is a 0% chance that they would have called that previous play by Brock Wright. He made a great play. I wish he would have dove and he would have been in,
Sure.
but he didn't. But like there was a 0% chance they're going to overturn that and call that a touchdown.
And you can't review turnovers.
You cannot review turnover. Well, that was yeah. So when he actually turned the ball over, you couldn't review it. But like the previous play was where people are complaining.
Well, they're stupid.
We should have challenged the spot. Well, there are two places in the game you can challenge the spot. Number one, to determine whether the ball did in fact cross the goal line. It didn't.
Correct.
And number two, to determine whether the line to gain was made.
Mm-hmm.
It was 7 yards ago. Right. They named it a first down, but he literally couldn't challenge that. The only thing he can do is challenge it and say, all right, I think it was a touchdown. They would have gone back and said, nope, you're wrong, but we'll move it up 18 inches. You're going to lose a challenge. You're going to lose a timeout, but you're going to gain 18 inches. And I swear to God, if he would have done that, people would have flipped their shit.
Yeah. He can't win right now. The only time anyone's going to agree with anything that Dan Campbell does in a game right now is if they win, they'll say, good job, Dan.
Yeah.
But if he loses for any reason, even if he made all the right decisions, he will still get blamed. Yeah,
so that was one, and I thought it was a perfect non-challenge. It's unfortunate that we ended up putting the ball on the ground the next play. That was Jamal Williams' first lost fumble his entire 6-year career. I mean, it was they weren't going to call that play if they were 18 inches closer as well. So it's not like, if they were 18 inches closer, they would have called a different play. No, they wouldn't have. So
he did also put the ball on the ground one additional time. They just happened to get it back.
Correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, not great.
Yeah. And then the other one I thought people were complaining about was the first interception, where I think it was Trayvon Diggs caught it. It was low. I thought he had his arms under it. I could not see the ball actually touch the ground. You could have maybe made an assumption. You could have probably went, well, it probably touched the ground. I don't think there was enough to overturn it. They review it anyway because it is a turnover, and New York does. And New York would then call back and say, hey, you know what? Pause for a second because we're going to reverse this. New York never called back. The on-field officials aren't the ones that review that. So people are like, the officials never reviewed like they're supposed to. I'm like, yeah, they did. It was the ones in New York. So those were the things that I thought he took a lot of crap for, and he didn't do anything wrong. He couldn't challenge there. He shouldn't have challenged at the goal line. I thought he did fine. I thought his coaching, I thought the play calling was generally good. I thought the decision-making by Goff was horrendous. In both of those passes were both bad decisions and bad throws. And he couldn't step up into the pocket to, get away from any of the pressure that was coming onto him and let one defender just pull the ball out of his hands and damn near just turn around and ran in the end zone with it. But like those weren't on Campbell. Those were on Goff. I thought Campbell did fine.
I also thought that he did fine. So, where are we going next, Mike?
Well, I think one of the things that we want to talk about is improvements.
Sure.
Where are the improvements? We're 1-5. There's no improvements in this team, and there are. So I guess let's talk a little bit about kind of the hidden improvements. The things are kind of under the hood. Where are the shining stars that people just aren't seeing because they're only looking at the win-loss record?
I think the defense played better this week. Okay, so the offense definitely played worse, but you're missing your three most important playmakers on offense. And for as much as I like to say the team around Goff is making him better, he's not making the team around them better. However you want to say that. Like he's a trailer, not a truck, right?
Yeah.
So like I also acknowledge that if he had DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark out there, just them being there would have helped. So it works both ways as far as I'm concerned. It's not solely one or the other thing. So I think that hurt us on the offensive side. I liked the way the defensive play. And can I say, just because I've been kind of down on this player for a long time, my hat's off to Jeff Okudah.
Yeah.
Jeff Okudah had 15 tackles, and it looked like someone shot him out of a cannon this week. He scored the highest he has ever scored for PFF grading this week at 86.1. That's an insane number. And every time that anything good happened on defense, just about, Jeff Okudah is coming up from the bottom of the pile because he's in there making a tackle. You know, like I was just impressed with Jeff Okudah this week. Excellent job. If this is a level that he can just even get to every so often, this guy is completely worth another contract. Like, I am absolutely thrilled with the game that Jeff Okudah had this week, and his like star appears to be climbing. So
yeah, I mean, he was one of our best tacklers. He wasn't called on to do a ton in coverage, but he was fine. Like, he didn't give up any huge plays. But man, he was filling those gaps and getting those guys off the edge. He was really, really impressive. Like, if this is the on the way up and he's still going to get better, I agree. Like, this is exactly what you want out of a number 3 overall draft choice.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, that's Okudah again. Oh, that's Okudah again. Jesus Christ, is that Okudah again? I guess it was Jeff Okudah again. Like, every single time, like, and he was coming up, and it wasn't just like him defending passes. I mean, he was coming up in run support and just laying it down, you know. And I was just overall, I was just really impressed with Jeff Okudah. Hutch had a nice game. I was very happy to see Hutch have a nice game. I was even more thrilled that Pascal came in and immediately made an impact in the running game.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that he's back. I'm looking forward to watching him develop as a player. And I think the thing that no one has really talked about too much is that John Kaminsky, before he went out, like in week 2, was leading this team in pressures. And you got him back as well. And like, that is a lot of quality play that they added to that defensive line. And I think it showed up because Aiden was able to finally like take advantage of things, and he demonstrated a spin move, which we haven't seen from him yet. I mean, not a good one. These were tight.
Yeah.
You know, and like one of them resulted in his second, or like his, I don't know which sack he got half a sack for. I think it was his first one where he pulls down Prescott by his jersey.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, is he going to get a horse collar for that? But like, I think with Jeff Okudah balling out, Kirby Joseph is developing as quite a nice little player as well through his time that he's been forced to play with injury. Hutch and Rodriguez, they drafted quality starters at all 3 levels of the defense this last draft. Now, the defense has not played well. It's last in the NFL.
Yeah.
But like, if this is not what a foundation looks like, I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, and I'm sharing my screen here. You can see this is the defense for last game. 86.1 from Okudah, 78.1 from Hutch. Even Derek Barnes was at almost 75. But like Kirby Joseph, he's a rookie, right? 67. That's in the green. On the coverage, he was a 75. Like,
yeah, that's his thing, right? Like, he is not supposed to be a run support safety. He's your ball hawking center fielder. But Mike, I have to do a mea culpa right now.
Uh-oh.
Apparently, Dan has been talking about this, but people have ignored him. And Dan, I apologize.
About
I don't know. I feel like I have to apologize for everybody here.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about Okuda and like just not being high on him.
I'm not exactly sure who Dan was referencing, but it doesn't matter because I will apologize for Lions fandom.
Yeah, I was really impressed with our rookies. One of the things that we were talking about before our show was because we wanted to talk about like what are the hidden things that we're improving on that's not showing up in the win-loss column yet. One of those was the play of Okuda, the play of Hutchinson. But one of the things I found really interesting, and this was a Pride of Detroit column, the young defense is really starting to take shape. Okuda played great. Hutchinson played great. Barnes, Kirby Joseph, Pascal, like even Julian Okwara actually had one of his best games in a while. He actually was somebody you heard his name, which you haven't heard of over the past couple of years. So like I think this is one of those hidden things that is like next year is really going to take and probably throughout the rest of this year, but like next year I think it's going to really drive some visible improvements.
So let's do a little grain of salt with Derek Barnes. He only played like 18 snaps. So like, yeah. So like, fine, great, but you played well in the time that you got on the field. I'm cool with it. So if you can turn, so like what I would be looking for is like, can you turn that into 25 snaps? Can you turn that into 30 snaps? Like what's your snap count where you're maintaining this level of play? Because I think that's going to be pretty important. I just want to get to some of the things said in the chat here.
Sure.
One Pride says, what's my biggest concern with Holmes? I don't have any concerns with Brad Holmes. I think Brad Holmes has done an exemplary job in kind of a shitty situation. And I'm very excited to see what he's gonna do in this offseason after this season, wrapped up. So the star has not dimmed.
Sorry.
All right, man. Have a good one, Dan. The star with Brad Holmes has not dimmed whatsoever for me. It's just that like people expect it to shine brighter really early. And like I just am still in the place where I'm like, I think that everything's going to be fine if he keeps doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. He played a little bit funky, not too much, but he did play.
And then on the offense, one of the things you and I were talking about. So Drew didn't watch it live. He watched it on NFL Plus and the kind of condensed game. I'm like, hey, because I did watch it live. Live? Well, before you for sure. I don't think I watched it live, but I watched the full telecast on NFL Plus. But I was like, hey, Drew, why don't you live chat me as you're watching things? And I remember one of the questions that you asked was, should Brock Wright be our starter? Because he played really well.
I'm getting to the point where I think that he should be in the conversation for pushing TJ Hockenson, which I know might sound ridiculous, but I don't know. Well, I'm sure I could go back to the grading system and find a game or two where he's not performed, and like I think Hockenson probably has the higher overall ceiling, but like I'm just so unimpressed with TJ Hockenson, and like I think that Brock Wright is at least what TJ Hockenson has been this year. And like, I don't know, maybe like the last 4 games or whatever, if the playoffs are not in reach, quote unquote, or what have you, like you see what you have with him as a starter just cause.
More 2 tight end sets, that kind of thing.
Well, so like if you're going to do more two tight end sets, then right now is the time to do that because Chark and Williams are not on the field.
Yeah.
So I mean, like your wideouts would be St. Brown and Reynolds, and then you could run Wright and TJ Hockenson. My only problem with running TJ Hockenson in a 2 tight end set is he shouldn't line up as a tight end. He should never line up as a tight end.
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you wanted to say something like, even if it's like lining him up like wide or something, like I would probably rather see that and putting Wright down on the line, or something to that effect. But like, I think that you could make the case that like Brock Wright could be your fourth best receiving option right now.
Yeah. I have never really been a Khalif Raymond fan. He played pretty well, though. Like, he surprised me.
Yeah.
This is the first game that I thought he's played like someone who deserves a roster spot. Craig Reynolds, I continue to be unimpressed with him.
Yeah, he's a nice little third stringer, but like the problem that I think Detroit has had for a long time is that not just this year, but in any year, like, if someone gets hurt, like Okuda last year, like Araraway has to be your number one corner. Like, he's not situated to be a number one corner. Like Corey Reynolds is a nice number 3 running back, but should he be getting like number 2 running back snaps? Probably not.
Right.
Like that's the issue with like depth and injuries and all that kind of stuff, is that like when someone gets shifted into a larger role because they need to assume that role due to someone else being injured.
Yeah.
That's where I think that they get in trouble. And to me, that's one of the like markers that like the overall talent is not where it needs to be currently on the roster, but they're working on it. Just it takes some years.
Yeah. And just like I've said, almost every single game, your quarterback can't be your 15th best player on offense anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, like with Jared Goff and like all of the support / hate that Jared Goff seems to have among the fan base, like I would look at it like, okay, we'll look at grading. Let's look at stats. Like he's
not good,
not terrible, but yeah, like, and so that was one of the things in the article that you referenced from like Pride of Detroit, is that
what the hell happened to Jared
what's
Goff?
going on with Jared Goff's pocket presence, and they give some like all 22 footage that indicates like he seems to be like leaking out early, or like if he knows where a blitz is coming from, he's immediately running away from it as opposed to like standing in the pocket. And he's just not athletic enough to like be a on the move quarterback.
Yeah, so here's the video that they talked about. They talked about it being a great play call, great protection. Quarterback can't sit at 10 yards like a statue. Step up into the perfect pocket and deliver the ball for a touchdown. This is TJ Lang.
Sure.
So if we watch the video, it does, like, we'll pause it right here, and we've got this beautiful pocket, right? And we've got our wide receiver up top, and he's going to come in. He's going to kind of slant down as the tape runs a little bit. Mm-hmm. All he has to do is step up into the pocket and throw the ball into this area, like right in the center of the field, because he has got beat. He's got inside position, and he has this whole pocket that he should be able to just get up and into. But instead, he just stands back there and then gets sacked.
Yeah.
And it's assuming you're going to make a good throw. That is it's almost essentially a sure touchdown.
So one of the things that the Lions kind of lived on in the early in the season was they hit a lot of big plays, like big running plays, a couple big passing plays. And that really helped them because then they didn't need to convert third down after third down after third down after fourth down after whatever, right? In order to get the same kind of distance in their drives. So Dallas's defense is legit defense. I mean, they're right up there among the best in the NFL. But yes, there are these opportunities that Jared Goff could have exploited. I just don't think that he's a good enough quarterback to consistently exploit them, which is the problem with paying him $30 million. So jumping around a little bit here.
And coming back to some of the bright spots that are kind of hidden, the teams with most snaps from rookie defenders through week 7, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 6th. We were just 2 snaps back of Jacksonville for 5th. Mm-hmm. And most of those teams have played an extra game compared to us.
Sure.
Like if we took this on a per game, we're probably top 3, maybe top 4. We might be just outside of Chicago, but like we've got a lot of youth coming in, getting a lot of experience this year. And that's one of the reasons why our win-loss record is what it is, because it takes a while to get, get good at the pro game. Like these were all great college athletes, but now they're playing against other pros, and they're not playing against Sisters of the Poor for their non-conference games and just beating them up and making themselves look good. They're playing against quality NFL teams, and it'll take a little bit to get those guys going. But to me, this is like a really great thing to see us get this much experience from our rookies this year. That also means Holmes is doing a damn good job of finding people that are capable of starting.
So I want to use that as a nice little segue to go to jumping back into the chat real quickly.
Yeah.
So Pride brings up some same points about what you just said, like that Holmes has done a good job, right? So like let's talk about that just for a second. So Pride says last year he came out with 3 starters in 2021, and you could possibly have 5 in 2022. So if that's the case, then he's averaging 4 starters a draft, and that's above average. And it's above average by any metric that you want to put a GM on. Okay. So the complaint that everybody likes to have is Detroit's second round picks are bad, right? So the second round pick, the only one that they're really talking about is Levi Onwuzurike. So Levi Onwuzurike played as a rookie his rookie year. He got hurt in his second year. Sounds a lot like Jeff Okudah, and now everybody is out there saying like he's done because he had spinal surgery, and I tend to think of it like there's every chance in the world that he could be back, right? Like he hasn't announced that he's retired. He's going to heal up and then he's going to evaluate it. But like if he comes back and he's just a serviceable defensive lineman, that's not a miss. You want more from a second round pick, but it's not a miss. And so Pride also brings up one other point here. Like, what about evaluating the QB position and how tied he is to Goff? And so my response to that is that he is not tied to Goff. So Jared Goff, if you were to cut him this year, you're making it, you're going to take a huge hit. But come March, when the new league year happens and you cut him, you're going to save $20 million. And I don't know that there is a player outside of a Mahomes or an Allen or Aaron Donald or somebody that you're like, I can save $20 million and have you not play for us. I got to think about that. So I would be surprised. Like my number one guy that I think is probably not on the roster next year is Michael Brockers. You can virtually pay for the entire incoming rookie class if you cut him after the season in the new league year. So I would be interested to see if that's going to happen. I would bet money on it. If they want to free up cap space quickly, the best thing that they can do is move on from Jared Goff, because he is the highest paid player on the team, and therefore he has the greatest savings of anybody else on the team that you could have. I mean, like they're restructuring guys' contracts just so they can elevate practice squad players to the roster. Like I see the fan base out there like throwing all these trade ideas around, and I'm like, you don't have the money to absorb contracts. Glenn Davis.
Glenn, what's up, buddy?
I don't know who Glenn. Do you know Glenn Davis?
Yep.
Another one of your guys, huh? Okay.
Another one of my guys. You need to get more guys.
My friends suck. So
took an ice bath the other day, and I saw the Lions doing it on the show. Yeah. But to your point though on Goff, I think if this season goes the way continues to go the way it's gone so far, we're probably going to end up in a top 3 overall pick.
Yes.
At that point, what do we do? Do we take a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young and go, all right, this is our thing. This is our opportunity. We could draft defense and we can get better. We can have Goff, with us for another year. And then we may win 6 or 9 games, the next year, 6 or 7 games anyway, the next year. But now we're away from being able to draft a top quarterback.
So this is
draft the top quarterback for number 2, 3, whatever overall, and then focus on defense. But we got our guy. Like where would you fall? I'm kind of curious where Pride and Glenn and Funky and those guys fall as well. But
So while they're formulating their responses, I'll say we are only 7 weeks into the NFL season. We have 10 weeks to go.
Correct.
11 weeks to go, something like that. So we're not to the halfway point. So I don't know that where the Lions will be drafting is quote unquote set in stone. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a top 5 pick. I think that between 5 and 10 is probably still a reasonable guess as to where they'll be selecting. But let's say that they are a top 3 pick, right? It'll depend on who the other teams are. But you could make the argument, and like I see that there are draft analysts out there that are saying now that Will Levis should be a top 5 pick. So if that's the case, you have 3 quarterbacks that are worthy, quote unquote, of a top 5 pick. So let's talk about it. Where I stand right now, if the draft were today and the Lions have the number 1 overall pick, I would draft Bryce Young. So here's my reasoning. CJ Stroud is an upgraded version of Jared Goff. Now, he might be a much better version of Jared Goff. He certainly is, as far as ball placement and arm strength is concerned, but he is a pocket passer. He is not going to, the thing of it is, like, he can use his legs. He chooses not to. So he wants to be in the pocket. So I tend to think that is less dynamic than someone like Bryce Young, who also would like to stay in the pocket, but is capable of making plays outside of structure and will use his legs. So the trade-off is that CJ Stroud is like 6'3", 220, 215, 220, solid build. And Bryce Young is 6 feet, 195, maybe. You know, and so people are like, well, he's smaller than Russell Wilson. Well, okay, like, I don't know, Russell Wilson's getting beat to shit out there, you know, like Kyler Murray hasn't missed much, if any, time, you know, and he's small, you know. Drew Brees was small, at least not tall. He's certainly got a better build than Bryce Young. But here are the things I hear about Bryce Young. Super intangibles, incredibly intelligent, a complete leader, a guy that you want in the locker room, problem solver. I'm willing to give him that he's 3 inches and 15 pounds short, like 3 inches shorter and 15 pounds lighter than CJ Stroud if I'm getting that stuff back. So I would hate to pass on a guy like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, but this might be the best opportunity the Detroit Lions have to make. And we don't know if these quarterbacks will work out. We don't know you never know if any quarterback will work out, or any player for that matter, to be honest. But like, this might be the opportunity to quote unquote upgrade at that position, because in the 24 draft, when you have guys like Caleb Williams from USC, Quinn Ewers from Texas, like those are arguably going to be the top 2 picks in the following year's draft. You don't know where you're picking them.
Yeah.
And one complaint that I have about NFL teams from a roster perspective is that they don't move on from quarterbacks quick enough. There's about 6 or 7, maybe 8 quarterbacks in the NFL that you really want on your team for multiple years. But like, look at how many, like I did a little exercise today about like how many quarterbacks might be on the market, just because teams are going to draft a quarterback, teams are going to be on the carousel or whatever. And it's like 21 guys. So, you know, and some of those are multiples from the same team, but like, you know, are the Atlanta Falcons going to play Desmond Ridder? Are the Carolina Panthers going to keep Matt Corral? Is Jordan Love going to eventually start for the Green Bay Packers? What's going on with all these guys? You know, can they be had for a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick at this point? Because the teams that they're on are going to decide, like, well, we're going to need to upgrade in a major way. Like, is Matt Ryan going to be available? He just got benched. Now, not that I'm saying that we should draft Matt Ryan, but like, Indianapolis Colts might be in the quarterback market, you know, and you would not have thought that coming into the season. So the argument for changing at the quarterback position is largely, in my mind, opportunity and money. So if you have the opportunity to take one, they probably should, especially if they're picking that high. And then because you're picking that high, you have the opportunity to save money. Like their cap hit in their first year will be like $8 million. That's a far cry better than $31 million. So if you want to do stuff like upgrade the roster so that you have, you know, a kicker that's worth his salt, or like a linebacker to replace Anzalone, or guard depth, or defensive tackle depth, or a slot corner that's worth, you know, that's worth a damn, like that's where the money's going to come from.
So I've got an interesting question for you then.
I love interesting questions, Mike.
I know you do.
Yeah.
So say we got the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
That's where we're drafting right now. So if the season ended today, we had the number 1 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
If the season ended today, I believe we would also have the 20th overall pick from the Rams.
That's correct.
Lamar Jackson has not signed a contract yet.
Sure.
Would you try to package up the number 1, the number 20, and maybe like next year's number 1?
So to me, like a couple of episodes ago, like I said, like we should trade 3 number 1s, some mid-round compensation, and like Jared Goff for Lamar Jackson. If they have the number 1 pick, I would offer the number 1 pick for Lamar Jackson, but I might just offer the number 1 pick. Like
wow,
the number one pick is so much more valuable than like 20. So like when one of the methods I've seen, I know Funky is all in on Trenton Simpson. He just loves it. One of the things that I think that I've seen draft analysts do is like, as far as evaluating future picks, because you don't know where you're going to end up in a future year in the draft, you basically, whether you're a great team or a terrible team, you value a future number 1 as if it is right in the middle of the round. So like the 2024 draft, the Lions would value potentially, I don't know how they do it in-house, but like the Lions should be valuing their 2024 first round pick as if it's the 16th pick in the draft, even if it's more likely that it'd be like a top 10 pick or something. So like we do need a corner. So what I would say when crafting a trade for Lamar Jackson is, a couple weeks ago, the Lions were picking like 8th. And then like 8, 26, and a future one, which is valued at 16, should all be right around what the number 1 overall pick is worth. You know, and if Baltimore is granted the option to say, like, we will trade Lamar Jackson to you for the number 1 overall pick, and then we will get a quarterback on another rookie deal, and we have an offense that is built for a mobile quarterback that's intelligent with a good arm, all this other stuff, you could just basically say, you know, there would be other picks involved, I'm sure, but like you could basically say, like, we're basically just getting a new version of Lamar Jackson. He can just be plugged into this offense, and we'll pick up some additional like draft capital from the Lions, maybe in the mid rounds or in future years or whatever. And we will take that money that we're going to save that we wouldn't have to pay Lamar Jackson $55 million a year. And we're going to keep investing that into the team because we want to maintain our spot in our division and our conference or whatever. So I would say if we had the number 1 overall pick, I would probably just stick
with it and grab Bryce.
Yeah. So like, well, either Bryce or CJ. Like, I'm not completely sold either way, but if you're basically saying like it's worth that and you have to pay Lamar on top of the trade pick compensation all that money and eat into your cap, I would just say I would rather have one of these kids on like a rookie deal for 5 years and see where we stand. I mean, like, if it's something like you can go get your quarterback because you have the number 1 overall pick, cool. And if it's like you have the number 8 overall pick and you can't go get your quarterback, then you make the trade.
Yeah.
But so like when you have the number 1 pick in the draft, you can literally pick anybody that you want in the whole thing. Yeah, so I would stick on that one, Mike. Good question.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll share my screen here. This is the Lions. We're coming out of the bye week. We lost the first one. This is the remaining schedule. Just so as we're kind of planning for like what is our draft? Where does it look like at the end of the season? I'm kind of curious what you guys all think. Chat as well. What do we think we're going to do for each of these games? So our next game is Miami. What do we win, loss? Can we stop Tyreek Hill?
No. So to me, it doesn't matter because whether it's Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, either one of those guys is faster than any player on the Lions defense. So like I'm terrified that they're just going to get carved up by these two speed demons. I think it's going to depend on who is their quarterback, because I would prefer it to be this 7th round rookie that they took. But it sounds like
right.
But it sounds like it's probably Tua coming back against the Lions, and if not, it's Teddy Bridgewater. And like, I don't know that there's much difference between those two guys. I would probably prefer to play against Bridgewater as opposed to Tua, but it's not a very big difference. But I think, and it is at home, which I think is helpful. I like Bryce Young more currently, one pride than CJ Stroud, but it's pretty close. But like I do think that this is a loss, but like I see a path to winning, but it's like old school football. Like you need to run the ball and completely control the clock, and you need to convert.
Amon-Ra St. Brown both have to be back.
Yeah, like you need your guys. They're going to facilitate your doing what your offense is trying to do, and like they have not had that for 3 games now. The Packers look beatable and is in complete disarray. Like they should have an elite defense. They don't for whatever reason. They should have a good offensive line. They don't for whatever reason. Their Aaron Rodgers looks completely beatable this year because the wide receivers are just not getting the job done. Like, and this game is at home. And I think, I don't know who the Packers play in week 8, but like, I think that it's a 50-50 game. Like I might even put money on the Lions to win it. I don't think that they'll be favored like far as the betting line is concerned, but I see the Packers game as being more winnable than the Miami game.
Yeah, which is weird. I didn't think that going in. So do we want to call this ultimately, I don't think we're going to beat Green Bay twice. So, but I think that we're potentially able to split with them. Being home, win at home, lose on the road.
So I had us at the beginning of the season beating the Bears twice, splitting with the Vikings, splitting with the Packers.
Yeah.
So that's still possible because we've only played one division game.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think that if we're going to split with Green Bay, we have to. It's going to be home and home. Like we're going to beat them at home because I think at week 18 they're going to be playing for a playoff game.
They may not be.
Well, I mean, I think that they're still going to be playing for a potential playoff game. Even a win may not guarantee them, but I think that they're going to be pretty close. So I do think that the only way that we're going to split with them is to beat them in week 9. Do we want to call that a win?
So I think I would, but if I had to put money on it today, I would bet that the version of the Lions that I saw play against the Dallas Cowboys with St. Brown and with Swift can beat the version of the Green Bay Packers that I have seen up through this point at home.
All right, I'm going to call that a win then.
Okay.
All right. At Chicago.
I think the Bears are terrible. Like I think at some point you just have to say that a team is what their record indicates, even if you think that they're bad. Like,
yeah, we'll get to the Giant or the Giants and the Jets soon.
The Giants and the Jets may not be great teams, but their record is their record, right? So at some point you have to go from like these guys are contenders, not pretenders.
Yeah.
So, but I think that like whether or not you look at the Bears as like a 3-win team that should be a no-win team or whatever, I think that the talent level on the Bears is closer to the Detroit Lions than it is, say, the Kansas City Chiefs. So
Right.
I think that the Lions, regardless of whatever the Bears' record may indicate, have a chance to. So here's what I will say about the Bears.
Right.
This one's in Chicago.
Yep.
If it's raining in Chicago, they're probably going to win because they just win in bad weather games. They beat New England, they beat San Francisco in just shitty weather games.
Yeah.
So like if it's raining in Chicago, which it might be, very likely that it could be in November, you know, they might get that one. But I think that the Lions are better at quarterback, they have better defense, they have a better running game, they have a better passing game, they're just better all the way around than the Chicago Bears.
All
you know, Robert Quinn might be traded at this point. So this will be after the trade deadline. So like, does Chicago shed some cap space? Do they trade things? You know, the one thing I'll say is that their offensive line is playing well currently. I still think we're better than them.
We'll call this one a win.
Okay.
All right. And then we're going to get to a couple teams here that we thought were going to be wins for us, but oof, I don't know. Giant in New York. Like,
so the Meadowlands is typically a difficult place, or MetLife Stadium, or whatever the fuck it's called now. Stupid naming rights. So I've watched a couple Giants games this year. They seem like a team that like is kind of like bad news Bears this whole season.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what a bunch of island of misfit toys kind of play. Oh, they're all playing really well. Oh, neat. You know, like, you know, the Giants are having the kind of season that our fan base wanted us to have this year.
Yep.
So
they're
like,
taking the step. They're taking the step.
And if like they haven't like crashed back down to earth, which I'm not going to bet on them doing, I'm going to say that's a loss.
I think so too. Partially because I think that Saquon Barkley in their run game has been really good. And you know what the worst part of our defense is?
Yeah, the run game.
Run game.
That's also the way that the Bears would beat us.
Yes, I agree. Buffalo, I mean, can we spend all of 7 seconds going not even?
Crushed. Not funny, not close. The Buffalo Bills last season did inexplicably lose to the Jaguars in the Josh Allen Bowl, but like crushed, dude. Yeah. Crushed.
Yep. Our measuring stick gets snapped in two.
Yep.
Jacksonville, I think that's a win.
I do think it's a win. It's at home. They will have, that's a long week, right?
Yep.
So they'll have like 10, 11 days. So they'll have an opportunity to kind of get a little bit healthier depending on what the injury situation looks like. That could be the Jameson Williams game. Probably not, but who knows? That would be cool if he came back this season. Who knows what the defense is playing like? And like Jacksonville has some weapons, but I don't know that they are so good that we should consider it like, oh, they're gonna come up from Jacksonville and beat us when they're on the road. Like the fact that it's a home game, I think really speaks quite highly of the Lions here. So I'm going to call that a win.
All right. Home against the Vikings.
We will beat Buffalo and watch the Texans end up with the first pick. Funky. It would be really super cool to beat Buffalo on Thanksgiving. That would be dope as shit.
You know what? That would be worth going from 1 to 2, right?
Yeah. If you were like Drew, you can lose on Thanksgiving and have the number 1 pick, or you can win on the Thanksgiving and have the number 2 pick. I'm picking the win and the number 2 pick every day of the week. So I don't think we beat the Finns. One pride. I'm going to say this is a win. And the reason why is...
Yeah, you're more optimistic than me.
Yeah. So 2 reasons. Number 1, it's at home. Okay. Number 2, we beat effectively the same team last year in a thriller, for our first win of the season in like week 13. And they're playing well, but like if the Lions don't do what they did against Dallas, where they turned the ball over with such a disparity, and like once again, if like St. Brown and Swift are playing, DJ Chark might be back by this point, who knows?
Jameson
like, I think that this has this is a winnable game. Like, we lost to them in their building, and it was close. Now they're coming to ours, and I think that we'll win.
All right. That's fair. I think we will lose, but I see where you're coming from. At New York, Jets, Jets.
So I think this is a loss.
Didn't think so early in the season, did we?
No,
we think this is a win.
I thought the Jets would lose their first 10 games. That's how bad I thought the Jets were.
Yeah.
So, like, my hat's off to them. Good job on what you've done thus far. Here's the thing about the Jets. They have lost one of their best offensive linemen in Elijah Vera Tucker. They have lost Breece Hall. I won't call him a star, but he was promising rookie running back. Zach Wilson, not playing great. They are winning in spite of Zach Wilson. So can everyone can the Jets maintain their health? You know, they just made a trade for Jacksonville's running back, Cam Robinson. No, that's not right. James Robinson. Thank you. So, like, what does that look like? It seems like they are thinking that if they don't run the ball effectively, they're not going to be able to win games.
Yeah. So
I would rather have to stop the run than stop the pass in the NFL today. And I don't think that they can, like, Okuda's playing well, you know, like Kirby Joseph is playing well in the secondary. Like, what's his name? He went to Ole Miss. He's their slot receiver. He's asked for a trade. Like, they're not going to trade him, but like Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
No. Elijah something. Help me out, guys. So he's asked for a trade. Denzel Mint. What?
So come on, chat. Let's help us out.
Yeah, help out, chat. You two of you. So, like, Denzel Mims, another wide receiver. Elijah Moore, funky, coming through in the clutch. Nice. Yep. So they've both asked for trades. They're probably each not getting traded. Like, so they, for whatever reason, they're not throwing to the 10th overall pick Garrett Wilson anymore. Like, everyone, it's like they're winning in spite of all of this, like, talent that they're supposed to have, and like they're becoming more injured as the season progresses as opposed to less injured. And like, I think the Lions are like trending in the other way.
Right.
So, but it's on the road, and I just feel like this is one of those games where, like, you think it's the Jets, and then they come out and they punch you in the face, and you never get back on your feet.
Yeah, didn't that just happen to the Packers?
It did.
The Packers,
you know, like the Panthers beat the Bucks 21-3 this last weekend. Like, you just never know.
Yeah, but I mean, the Jets were the ones that beat up on the Packers.
Correct.
Yeah,
no, Washington.
I mean, just like, well, didn't the Jets beat the Packers earlier?
Yeah, but who hasn't? I mean, like, it's a revolving door at this point. So
that's true. All right, so week 16 in Carolina.
I'm calling this a win.
I'm calling it a win as well.
They traded Christian McCaffrey. They traded Robbie Anderson. We don't know if it doesn't look like they are going to make any more moves. I would have traded Brian Burns for 2 number ones. Just because, like, their cap situation is going to be so crazy next year that, like, I don't know that they're going to be able to pay him what he deserves. And, like, you're already rebuilding. Like, 2 more ones seems like it would have been a big help. So even if it is a good player like Brian Burns. So, like, they may have shut everybody down to try and get the number 1 overall pick at this point. Like, you may not see Burns playing 40 snaps.
Yeah.
You know, you may not have, you know, their talented young players in the game for long stretches. So I think they are a program that wants to accumulate losses, and they will make roster moves to help facilitate that.
Yes. What we call tanking.
Right.
Not quitting.
Not intentionally losing.
Not intentionally losing.
Because players and coaches will never go for that.
Yes.
But the front office will basically say, like, we're going to make some moves that's going to allow, we want to develop some other players or whatever the case might be. So,
yeah. All right. So I also have that one as a win. Chicago Bears at home.
So it's on the road.
No, we're at home.
Oh, it's at home.
Yeah.
I want to call this a win. Like, I still believe in this team. Like, this team is too close. And so many, like, the back half of our schedule, there's just teams that are, like, underperforming, hurt, controversy, all this shit. There's a lot of home games. I just think that they're better than the Bears. Like, maybe the Bears get one, But like, I think that this is a win.
I agree. I had this one as a win as well.
Yeah.
In Green Bay,
I think
last
that's
game
a
of the
loss.
season. It's a loss.
Lambeau's still Lambeau.
So what you've got is loss, win, win, loss, loss, win, win, loss, win, win, loss. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more wins for the rest of the season. With 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you've got them going 6-5.
So I know that sounds hopeful, right?
That sounds
Like,
very hopeful. I had 4 and 7 because the difference is when I was looking through it was I think we're going to lose to Green Bay.
Okay.
You had that as a win. I've got that as a loss. And then I also had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You had us beating Minnesota. I have us losing to Minnesota.
And that's entirely possible, And so if this team goes 5 wins this year and is 5-11, 5-12, I still think that shows progress. Not as much as everyone wanted, but progress nonetheless. Like, because I think that year 3 of this rebuild is when you're supposed to see this team
take a step.
Yeah, take an actual, like, oh, okay, we're not on JV anymore. Now we're playing on varsity. Let's show everybody what we got. Like,
yeah,
that's my hope for this roster. Now I'm still apparently optimistic about them, but like,
you didn't think so, did you? Like, who knew?
Yeah, right. But like, I'm also not going to freak out and complain and bitch if they lose. So, I mean, I like the number 1 overall pick. That shit's fun. Like, there's another thing that we haven't talked about you can do with the number 1 overall pick yet, and that's trade it.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at some of the trade packages that you've received in a draft where there is a clear-cut quarterback or quarterbacks at the top of the class, and there might be 3 this year, coming off a really bad year for quarterbacks last year, you might get a god offer that's like 6 picks.
Yeah.
And
the old Ricky Williams deal, right?
That is the absolute worst trade in sports history. But like, if you were offered a package like what the San Francisco 49ers offered the Miami Dolphins to trade up, I think you have to take that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the ability to have multiple first-round picks in the upcoming draft and then for at least another 2 seasons after that is so incredibly valuable that, like, you would still have ammunition to make a trade if one came due. You would still be able to continue to get your salary cap under control. You would still be adding talent in multiple spots every round. And the more times that you pick, the more opportunities you have to be correct. Yeah. So like on Pro Football Network, they have a pretty, I think, decent mock draft simulator, and it will offer you trades. And like, so with the Lions sitting at number 1, some of the trade packages are like, 3 picks in the current draft. So like a 1, 2, and a 4 plus, a 1 next year, a 2 next year, something like that. That might be a little bit light for the number 1 overall pick, but like, once again, it's an AI doing it, not a human being. Right. So like, and if you are talking to Indianapolis, Carolina, who knows who else is going to be in the market for a quarterback? Like, is Justin Fields going to be on the market next year? I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, and if you're offered 6 picks and half of those are number 1 overall picks, or if it's like 2 1s and like 3 2s and a third, like, you need to pay attention to that. So, because I mean, if Brad Holmes does something like that, like the Jamison Williams trade up, the Trinity Benson trade, all that shit's gone because you just recouped all that capital 5 times over.
Yeah, one of the things that happened in the last week or so was the big trade of Christian McCaffrey and their wide receiver, wasn't it? Who was the other guy that they traded?
Robbie Anderson for a nickel and a piece of bread.
So, but between those 2 guys, they got, with the exception of, they didn't get any first rounders, but they got an entire draft. They got a second, third, fourth, fifth, and I think sixth, and maybe even a seventh. They had an entire draft by handing those two guys off to their respective teams. That's a big deal. That's an entire draft that other teams don't get that they get. That's a game changer for their organization.
San Francisco effectively does not have a draft pick in this upcoming draft. They have a late round. I think they have one late round pick.
Yeah.
But like Carolina had they had a first, second, and fourth round pick coming into this year. I mean, like, it's nothing. I mean, it's not nothing, but I mean, it's not great, especially on a team that's like, we need a new quarterback, and our cap, we're going to be $50 million, not $50 million. We're going to be $25 million over the cap next season and need to replace 16 players.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do?
They're in a tough spot. They're almost in as bad a spot as New Orleans.
Oh my God. So overthecap.com had a fun article about like, what do you do if you're the New Orleans Saints? It's literally every starter needs to either be cut or restructured. And like only in certain ways can that make sense. And then that gets you down to zero. You still need to be able to field a roster. Like when everybody's like, the cap doesn't matter, just push it down the road. That bill comes due. Like next season, they have $190 million already spent on like a cap that's supposed to be $225 million.
Yeah.
You're not going to get, you can't effectively field a team or re-sign guys on $35 million.
Yeah. Because
your draft class and your practice squad are $13 million.
Yeah, and it's not like that 190 is 50 of your 53 guys. That 190 is something like 27 guys.
Right. I mean, and New Orleans has done the same thing that San Francisco did. They traded future picks so they could be all in this year. That's why, and like everyone was like, Philadelphia is so smart because they fleeced New Orleans, and they did, and like if the draft was today, like New Orleans has a top 5 pick, and that goes to Philadelphia, who looks like they're going to win their division and make the playoffs.
And end up with a top 5 pick anyway.
Yeah, like right now, New Orleans is trying to win, but are effectively tanking, but for Philadelphia. It's mind-blowing how good of a trade that was. Like, there are some teams you want their picks more than other teams. And I would be like, a New Orleans first-round pick is definitely right at the top of my list for like an asset that I would want.
Yeah.
So...
Right on. Well, I think we covered pretty much everything. Was there anything else that you could think of that we didn't talk about? Anything in the chat that you guys questions for us, or what you guys wanted to talk about? I think we covered everything on my list.
Yeah, we covered everything on mine. I guess like, while if One Pride or Funky has anything they want to throw in last minute, I'll kind of vamp for a second while they craft their questions. But I just want to say, like, I'm not all out on this team. I'm not all out on the coaches, the players, or the front office or ownership. I mean, I do not want to be a fan that's just loyal to the record. I want to be a fan that's loyal to the team. I know I'm wearing a Ravens hat, but if we get to 50 subscribers, I won't be anymore. And we've been stuck on 38 forever.
Nope. We're up to 39.
Oh my goodness gracious. Was it your buddy here?
I think it was Glenn. I couldn't see in the analytics of Google yet, but I think it was Glenn.
Appreciate it. I mean, you can't get to 50 until you get to 39, right? So
That's true.
I'm just still very high on this team. I just think that all the expectations that should have been on the team next year got put on them this year, and that's creating a huge disparity. No, I'm not concerned about Holmes' evaluation of QBs because he hasn't evaluated one yet.
Well, I think what he's getting at is Holmes was a pretty key piece of the evaluation of Jared Goff when he was with the Rams.
Oh, I see.
And because he went, we should do this with Goff. Are we concerned there?
No, I'm not, because like, I don't, if you are good at your job, which apparently like somebody thought that Brad Holmes was, like, both in Los Angeles and in Detroit, right? Like, you don't become the director of college scouting in Los Angeles if someone doesn't think you're good at your job.
Yeah.
And like Detroit doesn't hire you as a GM if they like, oh, well, we disagree with the Rams assessment of their guy. but we're going to hire him anyways. Like that's not how that worked, right? So I think that there is a type of player that every GM coach would want to have on their team. Like I think that Deuce Staley wants bigger bruising running backs than like DeAndre Swift, but like he understands who DeAndre Swift is, right? Ben Johnson understands who DeAndre Swift is. And like, you don't always have the option to go get a player like that. And sometimes when you do have the option, it's a mistake, right? Like Funky earlier in the chat said like, boy, would you rather be Denver, and have their problems right now? No, I would not. Because if this Russell Wilson thing doesn't work out, and it absolutely looks like it's not going to, they're going to be bad for the next half decade because they won't have any picks.
Yeah.
Or
money.
Or money.
Guaranteed money.
Signed him to a contract before they even saw what he could do. Didn't have to do it.
I mean, in fairness, like it's not like they didn't know what he could do. They had almost a decade in Seattle of like he played well. I always thought he was overrated, and I thought the rest of the team made him look better than he personally was. But he was still a very good quarterback, and that's what they traded for, was that very good quarterback. He just apparently is turning into whatever Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are both turning into.
Weird how all of those guys at almost the same point in their careers are seeing a fall off, but like,
yeah, might have something to do with age. I don't know.
No. So, like, I don't think that this is a long way of me saying that I don't think that Brad Holmes is locked into a certain kind of quarterback. And if he doesn't pick my guy, I'm not going to change my opinion, right? Like, there's every indication that CJ Stroud might be the number 1 overall pick in this upcoming draft. Like, he is closer to Goff than Bryce Young is. And yeah, like, I'm sure that Brad Holmes had an opinion of who Jared Goff was when the Rams traded up all those picks with Tennessee to draft Jared Goff.
Yeah.
But also Brad Holmes' evaluation of Jared Goff might have been, not completely sold on it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with the whole Goff Holmes thing is because he was one of the people that pushed for them to draft Jared Goff, and because he is now our GM and then traded to get Jared Goff, I think people have this assumption that he thinks Jared Goff is our future. Now, they say those kinds of things very publicly, like, yep, Jared Goff's a great quarterback. We're happy to have him. But they've never said anything about this is the guy of our future. We're going to have him long term. They had to get rid of Stafford. The only way a team can do that is to give up something in return. And the Rams gave up some great draft capital, but they also said, y'all, we can't keep two $40 million quarterbacks on the roster. You have to take one. And we said, okay, but throw in another first round pick. So I don't think that Holmes was trying to quote unquote go and get Goff, and now he's married to Goff because he drafted him and now he traded for him. I think it was we're trying to get the best deal for Matthew Stafford. So if that happens to also get Goff and give us a quarterback that can bridge us for a couple years, and maybe a change of scenery improves him, it's a no-brainer. Now, granted, the change of scenery hasn't improved him, and I think that Holmes and Campbell are going to go, yep, it was a noble effort, and we got a bunch of draft capital for Stafford, and we got a bridge guy for a couple years. I don't think they're going to be married to him at all. I think they're going to take whoever is. I think they're going to pick a quarterback in the first round of the draft, especially for a top 5 pick.
I would agree with you. The only thing that I think disrupts that is, say, if they are like 4, and the three teams in front of them are all taking quarterbacks. Like, I'm not drafting Hendon Hooker. I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, I'm not taking Spencer Rattler. So like if they're sitting at 4 and Jalen Carter and Will Anderson are on the board, okay, let's fucking do it. But like if they are sitting in a position and one of those 3 guys is sitting there, like, I mean,
what's 3 guys? Young, Stroud, and who?
Levis.
Yeah.
Now I'm not I don't think that Levis is on the same tier as the other two. So he's an SEC quarterback. He's played well. I mean, Bryce Young has played well at Alabama for 2.5 years, whatever it is, 2 years. CJ Stroud, the only knock on CJ Stroud that I've heard is that he plays for Ohio State. Well, people in Michigan hate Ohio State.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I don't know. I think that some of that is just bias because he's from Ohio. I will say that, like, Ohio State does want a certain kind of quarterback in their system. But, like, CJ Stroud is not the same kind of quarterback that Justin Fields and JT Barrett and Dwayne Haskins and, you know, some of these other guys were. They just could all do those same things. And, like, Ohio State's entire offensive scheme is to get wide receivers open in the middle of the field and, like, confuse defenses. And I'm like, okay. I mean, like, like Ben Johnson can't do that shit. I mean, come on. Like, you can watch Ohio State games and figure out what the fuck they're doing, or call their coaches and be like, can I have half your playbook? Coaches do that shit. Like,
Yeah.
So I don't think there's much concern that, like, so when I hear someone say we can't draft CJ Stroud because he plays at Ohio State, I think, like, you're looking at a picture on someone's helmet, and therefore I'm just not going to listen to your opinion because it's based on no relevant facts or logic.
Yeah, I think part of that is also kind of the Miami Hurricanes went through the same thing, right? They had a dominant team in the 90s and early 2000s. I remember there was at least one year they had 6 first-round draft choices off their team in one draft. They were amazing.
Yeah.
You know who they had? They had Gino Torretta at quarterback.
Right.
Who won a Heisman Trophy, and he's now an accountant, right? And I think, and there were a few of those quarterbacks from the University of Miami. They were good in college. They won a lot of games, but they didn't make it in the playoff or in the pros. And I think Ohio State has a similar reputation. But we also have to remember, also coming from University of Miami was Vinny Testaverde. And, like, so just because they're from University of Miami doesn't mean they all can't make it. They don't translate to the pros. And I think the same thing for Ohio State. Just because Dwayne Haskins or whoever was like, they were okay, and they didn't really stick around. They were not a starter or a stud. That doesn't mean that CJ Stroud isn't going to be the Vinny Testaverde. That's going to be like, bam, I'm there, and I'm going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Right. Exactly. So, and for those of you that are huge CJ Moore fans, he just got re-signed by the Lions. So more safety help is on the way for the Detroit Lions. So, CJ Moore back in town. A lot of optimism. If you want to get in touch with us and ask us a question you want us to discuss prior to being in chat, hit us up at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com, and we will read them on the air.
We will. As always, if you're listening to this on recording or if you're doing it while we're streaming here, all you guys in the chat, please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us kind of grow the community and get a little bit more visible. I know you guys aren't the only Lions fans that you've got friend groups, you've got people. Tell them about us. Throw some recommendations to your other Lions friend fans and send them our way. Tell them to subscribe. It's a great time. Drew's really smart. I'm really good looking. It's a great match.
Yes,
that's all I got.
Those things are true.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good, man. I'll catch you next Tuesday.
One second.
Oh, you got a second. All right.
One Pride says, you think we should trade for Payne? So we'll end on this.
We'll end on this.
This is the same idea as Roquan Smith. Giving up some kind of premium or mid-round pick to trade for a guy that you're going to have to give a big second contract to. So the only way, peace out, Funky.
Peace, Funky.
The only way you can make a trade like this is if you have a talk with a guy's agent and say, what is he looking for in a second deal? You know, so like I would rather go through the season with. We just had Pascal, Kaminsky come back. Who knows what the defensive line is going to look like in 2 weeks? I'm not saying I don't want Deron Payne on the team. Like if you could just add him, that's cool. But like the reason that Washington can't keep him is because they have to pay Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat. They just paid Terry McLaurin. They're in the market for a QB. Like someone had to go, and it's Deron Payne, unfortunately. So, but like I would not make that trade because I have to give him a second contract.
All right,
man.
That's it. We will talk to you guys later. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Peace.